to another episode of the Bank Free Blueprint. I have today with me, Eva Medlake. Welcome, Eva.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. You and I have known each other for a while now. I've always been impressed with with everything that you've been doing, whether it be real estate investing or the coaching that you do. Maybe, would you mind just sharing just a little bit about your background, some details about how you got into real estate, and maybe a bit about your coaching efforts? And you've been coaching both on your own for yourself personally. You have a coaching business, as I understand it, but you also have been working with another group of real estate investor trainers. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, my journey started literally about 7 years ago, the year I turned 50, eek. So I'm now 57 years young. And it happened during that time when the economy had all of those changes and downturn. And I was actually faced with, my salary was cut in half, my work time was cut in half. And I found myself at this age actually having to go out and interview for work. So by trade, I'm a dental hygienist, have been for over 30 years. And I found that it was quite humiliating for me to go back out into the workforce looking for a job, kind of having to dumb myself down. And I had the realization that if I didn't make a change, that I would be working for someone the rest of my life and not being able to literally live the life of my dreams. And my dream has always been, along with my husband, Peter, who I believe you've interviewed as well, was to live in Europe for the summers and, just have that lifestyle where we could work from anywhere, take vacations, unlimited vacations, not be tied down to someone else's schedule, and literally not to be making someone else rich. And I was introduced to one of Robert Kiyosaki's books and realized that real estate investing actually resonated with me. So, found a workshop that he was giving in the area, literally took that, and it so spoke to me that how I could create and build wealth through real estate, which was something I could never do in dental hygiene, was really build wealth. And the prospect of using other people's money to do that really resonated with me, because as you know, Bay Area living ain't cheap. And I live in the Bay Area as well. And so we signed up on the spot to take those real estate investment classes, to learn how to do it, to hire a mentor to learn how to do it correctly. Because basically, if you want to get somewhere that you've never been, you have to do stuff you've never done. And it's always best to find someone who's done that and have them show you the way. So that's pretty much how we got started.
Yeah, and you and I both know the mentor that you worked with. Alex.
Yes, he was one of my mentors for sure. Yeah. I've hired a couple. He was actually the second one that we had out through that particular education company, and that's how we were blessed to meet you. Yeah. And we started our private lending business shortly after having Alex shift our thoughts around money and private lending and show us a little bit more detail how that could be done, and took some extra education on that as well. And started doing some lending in addition to our real estate investing, holding assets to build wealth. So we've done that as well. Okay.
When you got started after the mentoring or during the mentoring process, what were some of the thoughts going through your head at that time about being, you shared kind of what the transition was a bit, but specifically as a new real estate investor, after you've gone through some mentoring and started actually getting involved in a little bit more actual hands-on investing, can you share maybe what that experience was like for you? And that, I think what that'll do is it'll allow some of our listeners to get a feel for what some of the thought processes are when you're going through that, and maybe even help guide them a little bit if they're just beginning on the active side of the real estate investing.
Absolutely, Tom. Well, I'm not going to lie, there is some fear wrapped around there because the Bay Area, there are a lot more zeros behind numbers when you purchase and rehab than there is in other parts of the country. But there's also a certain amount of due diligence, education, trusting in what your trainers and mentors have taught you. And as a woman, I have also some extra arsenal, and that is our instinct, and our gut actually tells us a lot too when we going into investments, about people, about the deal, about the project, about who to work with, who not to work with. But I have to say, overcoming fear, fear of making a mistake, fear of possibly failing or doing something wrong, that's a huge one to overcome. And what we were able to do was have that fear forward us into what we wanted to do and the life we wanted to create, as opposed to letting us stop us in our tracks and not being able to move forward. So, I talk a lot about mindset shift when I am coaching students, either in real estate or in other areas of life. And really, fear is there to protect us, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's rational fears and there's irrational fears. And so just getting over that hump of knowing that, okay, nobody's going to die. If you just trust the process and do literally what your teachers and mentors have told you to do, you're going to be okay. So I would say, for me and for Peter as well, probably more so for Peter, fear was a huge one to overcome. I have the type of personality that I shoot first and then ask questions later and see who was hit by the bullet. So it's not fearless, so to speak, but I do have a little bit more courage when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, and Peter is more along the lines of
a little more caution.
Ready, aim, fire.
Then think about it and rework the numbers again.
Right.
He's got more of an analytical brain than I do.
Well, that's a great combination.
It comes in handy a lot because I tend to glaze over a little bit when there's too much numbers. So I'm really fortunate to have him. That excites him. I'm like, okay, you deal with that part while I pick out the tile.
Yeah. Good. So you just mentioned a couple of advantages that you felt were advantages as being a woman, getting started in the business, the instinct, and being able to get a feel for things a little bit more from the emotional side of the equation. Have you noticed any hurdles or ways where you felt it's been harder to get into the business because you're a woman?
Yes, actually, it is kind of a male-dominated business when you think about it. And I have come across project managers and contractors who didn't realize my, let's just say, my authority in the business. And wanted to defer to my husband all the time. And I find in general, whenever there's a contract written, we have an entity that we have that we buy and sell properties in. Just how the man's name is always put first. I had one project manager look at my husband and said, "Peter, is she allowed to read the contract and sign it?"
Whoa, that was dangerous. Whoa.
I'm sorry.
That was in this lifetime?
In this lifetime, yeah.
Yeah.
That was in this lifetime. And so, there's some condescension going on. People automatically defer to Peter when we are together in something. And, what they don't realize is that, I took the initiative of the real estate investing because I was the one seeking it at that time. Peter is self-employed and has a very viable business, so it wasn't really anything on his radar. I kind of dragged him kicking and screaming, but he quickly saw that it was a good business for us to have together. So we worked side by side quite closely. But I do get resentful, like even when we bought our car. I bought the car, and all the paperwork comes back in his name.
Yeah.
even the insurance and everything. So, you know, it is kind of a male dominated world. People defer to the men. I can't let that stop me or get to me in any way. But sometimes it can be a little bit like, wow, you know, I'm here finding the deals, negotiating the contracts, doing all that, and then you get all the paperwork back and it says Peter, and it's just like,
Yeah.
what? You
Yeah.
know, was
Right.
I in there at all? But yeah, it is what it is.
So some of that I'm thinking might tie into some of the coaching that you do, the mentoring that you do, not so much in the real estate. You mentor and you work in the real estate business on that somewhat, but even on your other coaching for women, can you just describe that a bit more? And maybe I'm wondering what sort of tie-in there is in how you might coach or mentor women that are in that same situation, that are feeling the same way that you felt when you were going through, and sometimes still do go through that.
Well, basically, when I am coaching women, especially women of a certain age, it's more of, you know, there's some generational differences in how women think. And I find women over the age of 50, some of them still are a little bit doubting
Mm.
their own power, doubting their own ability, still not quite owning their voice, and still putting some limiting beliefs on what they can and what they deserve mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And I find the mindset shift of deserving a life that they love and a life that they want to live, as opposed to putting themselves last to care for the household, the husband, the children, the family, or even their job. You know,
Mm-hmm.
career-minded women a lot of times are so focused on being good workers in this life and not taking care of themselves, not doing self-care, not treating themselves like the queen that they deserve to be treated. So
Mm-hmm.
my coaching really centers around owning their voices, owning your voice, getting over limiting beliefs, knowing that you can do anything you set your mind to. And I believe instinctively women know that. They just may have some self-worth issues that, or just time issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's too late for me. You
Yeah.
know, it's over. My time has passed. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you still deserve to rock it out. Yeah.
Yeah, so putting up with more mediocre instead of being able to live the life
Settling. Hmm.
you truly deserve. When you are mentoring and coaching, is it generally one-on-one or is it sometimes group coaching? And the reason I ask that is that when you're working with someone, just trying to get a feel for how what that working relationship is like, and how maybe I don't know if you're able to share any kind of hints or tips or anything for any of our listeners, and how to at least start triggering that mindset shift.
Well, mostly I've been working one-on-one with students or clients to this point, and I'm hoping to someday open it up more to group coaching. I know my learning style is best one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And so I guess because that's how I learn the best, that's kind of how I tend to, because everybody's situation is different. So working with people one-on-one, I find to be, it resonates with me more. And then I get to know people, and it's a safe place to share what's going on in their lives. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe sometime in the future, we'll open it up to group style coaching, but one-on-one seems to be more effective because, like I said, everybody's situation is different. And
Mm-hmm.
it really is, you know, up until recently, I've been coaching specifically in the real estate area. And I've coached a lot of women who do feel this intimidation from men in the investing world, especially going to real estate association clubs, investment association
Oh.
clubs, or meetups or anything like that. And they do shrink and quiet down and don't move forward in networking because of a limiting belief. There's shyness as well, too, as to what they don't know if it's a new territory for them. And so
Mm-hmm.
I work a lot on that mindset shift and really getting in there and having your voice heard and
Mm-hmm.
asking for what you need and what you need from people. And people are I find people are more willing to help than they are not. That's just been my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. When people know there's a need for, and they can reciprocate, a lot of times they do. I've seen that with a lot with our the meetup that we have,
Yeah.
where people are more often than not are very willing to help each other out.
Yeah.
When you are coaching, and let's say you're coaching someone in real estate, and do you see it using real estate more or less as the palette, or the sort of the subject to do the coaching on, and then bring in your strategies and techniques over the top of that, like the personal development piece of it? Does that make sense?
I think I know where you're going. I try to integrate both because I find that most people who do make the investment into investing in real estate and the education for it do not quite have that mindset shift to make it work and see how it can work. And I know when I was doing it, I was very determined to be successful in this business, and I uh, read a lot of books and did a lot of personal development, motivation, inspiration, just to keep myself on track, because there are days that it does seem like nothing's going to click, nothing's going to happen, it's not working, I'm spinning my wheels, I'm just going to work my 9 to 5 for the rest of my life until I can collect Social Security. And I would see that come on in me, and I always had some go-to readings, books, videos that I would actually have to use to bring myself back into a state of, you know what, I can't give up.
Yeah.
Because usually, the breakthrough happens right after
Mhm.
the breakdown. And I
Yeah.
that happens more often than not. And over the years, I've been able to garner more support in the area of personal development, as you're
Hmm.
well aware, and create more support around, feelings of either inadequacy or lack of courage or fear or breakdown or whatever happens that kind of makes us want to kind of stop and give up. And it's important to surround yourself with a network of
Hmm.
people who are like-minded in a positive way.
Yeah.
They say you're kind of like the 5 people that you spend the most time
Hmm.
with. And
Right.
so you always want to uplift yourself and reach higher, and people who are doing things in that arena and finding success and are not discouraging at all, but really uplifting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really does kind of weave and tie into each other, and it works in any industry, of course.
Hmm. One of the things that you mentioned, that you and I were talking just briefly before the
Mhm.
call here, before this interview, and talking about sometimes things almost, the fact that they get so bad, and sometimes can be a blessing. And so, and this isn't exactly how you stated it, but the way I look at it, it's sort of like using the pain and the anger and the all those negative emotions that we go through when we've hit rock bottom, and being able to it's like a slingshot, pulling it back.
Mhm.
Tension of all that is like a slingshot being pulled back.
Yeah.
Sometimes having that much of it pulls it back far enough so it really catapults us or shoots us that much further ahead, rather than if it's something it's uncomfortable, it wasn't fun going through, but it wasn't all that bad, then sometimes the change doesn't become as extreme either. So I don't remember the term that you used, but it was
Mm.
something along that line. But I think anytime we can get to that point where we're using that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's funny because, when I was preparing for my 50th birthday, uh, 7 years ago, we were booking a trip to Cabo, and I was so excited to have, a nice celebration with just my husband and I. And, and then the rug was pulled out under me.
Hmm.
I was cut down from 4 days at working, which is full time in my profession, down to 2 days. And she cut my salary at the same time. And I was so discombobulated that I booked the resort for the trip and then booked the flight the week later. So I was just like, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And
Yeah.
I was in a place of some fear, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? My profession has always been kind of recession proof.
Hmm.
And, but I also really had this kind of moment where, okay, this didn't happen to me. It happened for me.
Yes.
I don't know quite what yet, but it must mean that something better for me is coming, and this had to get out of the way. It's
Hmm.
like, yeah, I had to make room to receive what was coming for me,
Yeah.
to get
Wow.
rid of, I was too full to look for anything else. And I use that a lot in my life when something's going on, and I don't quite understand why. And it seems like, oh my God, how could this happen? Well, it's, things mostly happen for us and for our own good, to bring us to something better that we didn't notice was available to us before, until we actually made room for it.
Yeah.
And then we get to see more of what's out there and what's available to us to really forward us on our mission, or on the life that we want to live, or however. And I just saw how my life really opened up exponentially when I got into the world of real estate. I got to meet some fabulous people, mentors and friends and trainers and colleagues, and just was able to create wealth for my
Hmm.
family, which I was never able to create before. In dental hygiene, and literally, living paycheck to paycheck, a little bit of savings here and there, but not any real wealth. And I saw my net worth really went from zero to millions in a few years, which
Hmm.
I could have never seen in the profession that I was in.
Yeah. Right. So the benefits generally show up in the end, and the we see the
Yeah.
upside, but sometimes it's hard to see it while we're in the middle of the storm.
Yeah. And I didn't know what was possible. I would have never explored real estate to the degree that I have
Hmm.
if I hadn't had that moment of pain, as they say. It's usually some pain that kind of catapults you into something new and uncomfortable. And it was completely out of my comfort zone.
Hmm.
But I did see the possibilities in it. And I saw the possibilities in me to create a successful business out of it. And I still get to create that.
Hmm. Now, you mentioned that you had a few resources that you relied on or leaned on in those times when you were going through some of the challenges,
Mhm.
some of the down times. Can you share a few of them? Maybe what maybe some of our listeners might be able to
Yeah.
also take advantage of.
I'd be happy to. Well, when I was going through the real estate one, it was all of the real estate books. What is it? Think and Grow Rich, and a
Hmm.
lot of Robert Kiyosaki's book, as we refer to now as the Purple Book series, because
Right.
all of his books are purple. But
Mhm.
recently, books that I've been reading that I absolutely love is by an author named Jen Sincero, and she wrote a book called You Are a Badass. And then she wrote a second book called You Are a Badass at Making Money.
Mhm.
And that book literally deals with just about any type of business, any type of mindset shift that you would need to overcome your fears and limiting beliefs, and to get out of your comfort zone and create an amazing life that you love. And so I still read those. I've read them cover to cover already, but a lot of times I'll put them on in the car on
Mhm.
Audible if I get discouraged
Uh-huh.
about something. And they're done with humor, so
Mhm.
you can get to laugh at yourself. You'll recognize yourself in a lot of her experiences as well. So they're fun.
I remember you mentioning them to me a while back, and I've not read them. Are they geared more towards women or towards anybody?
Anybody,
Okay,
anybody.
great.
Anyway, she just happens to be a woman author, but
Mhm.
it's geared around mindset,
Mhm.
around your mindset about money, around yourself, your
Mhm.
limiting beliefs, loving yourself.
Uh-huh.
And she shares her journey, much like I do in my blog, just my journey into getting from where I was to where I am now, and all those steps around the way, all the trips and falls and getting up and dusting off,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and all of that. So actually Peter's reading them. So yes.
Hmm.
And I love it when he comes home from one of his trips down to either see you or somebody else in the South Bay and goes, you know what else she said today? Because it's a long trip in traffic. So
Yeah.
I love putting on an audio book and just really working on my mindset. Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Amazing.
There's another book called The Universe Has Your Back. There's just so many out there.
Hmm.
I just know I love the ones that deal with a little humor as well, because you know, life is too short not to have
Hmm.
some laughs along the way, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Do you remember who the author of The Universe Has Your Back is?
Yes,
And by the way, we will.
Gabrielle Bernstein. Gabrielle Bernstein.
Okay. And
Yeah.
we'll put these for anybody who might be driving while they're listening to this. We
Hmm.
will be putting them in our show notes. So
Awesome.
the author and the title of the book and whatever other resources. So
Hmm.
good. So those are resources you rely on. Um, any advice that well, let's start with this. Is there anything that you can think of that you wish that someone had told you when you started out, specifically in the real estate business? Is there something that you could share that you wish you had known when you got started?
Well, what I worried about the most when I got started is having the money to do deals. And I literally wasted a lot of energy on worrying
Mm-hmm.
about that. And someone told me along the way, if you have the deal, the money will come to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, just shop your deal and you'll find the money. And I didn't believe it.
Uh-huh.
I guess somebody told me and I didn't believe it, is pretty much it.
Yeah.
Until I got to a state where I did have a deal that I needed money for. And literally within 24 hours, I had the money. And then the light bulb went on, like, wow,
Yeah.
they were right. You know, money finds a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And a lot of it has to do with the way it's presented, the way you can prove out the risk mitigation, the
Yeah.
structure, all
Yeah.
of that, and that's where the mentoring can come in. And
Yeah.
can you speak just a little bit about your mentoring or your uh, work in the company that you work with part time, or are you part time out with?
Yeah, you know, I had been mentoring up until recently, specifically working with students to really get them unstuck and get their businesses moving forward.
Mhm.
And recently, I transitioned to actually being part of the sales team that actually sells the education for investing. And I find that just sitting with students in that class, and that's a 3-day class, involves a lot of mentoring and
Mhm.
the mindset shift, because you know, just people are so paralyzed by fear
Mhm.
because they don't have the knowledge. And what I get to do is just share my story and how the company really supported me in getting the knowledge that I
Mhm.
needed to move forward, uh, to do real estate investing. And it also, you know, there's also mentorships included in most of those packages where you have the support and you have the guidance to get to where these mentors, that they've traveled in our shoes already.
Mhm.
And so I get to really work with showing people what's possible for them if they want to use real estate as an avenue of building wealth and building cash flow specifically.
Mhm.
You know, I know that was a big thing with me. We started out really fixing and flipping, as I say, you know, but
Mhm.
finding distressed properties, fixing them up and flipping them. But we got to a point where we were able to use the proceeds from those type of opportunities to buy cash flowing properties and businesses, to where, you know, it's just a beautiful thing to be anywhere in this world
Mhm.
and have money still coming into your bank account without you specifically having to work for it.
Yeah.
And just to get people to believe that it's possible,
Mhm.
because I don't know why I was never as skeptical as other people were, or even my husband was. But I just know that if you look at most of the billionaires in this world, most of them did it through real estate. So it was kind of like, duh.
Mhm. Right.
Why can't I? And it's just getting people thinking, you know, when I hear people say, oh, I could never do that. or it's too late for me, or I'm too old. Like, no, I didn't start till I was 50. And a lot of people sitting in the classes are in their 30s and 40s. They've got
Mhm.
huge jumps on me. And I gave myself kind of a 5-year window.
Mhm.
I put my goals in 5 years and had it in front of my computer every day, that I was marketing and sending out letters and doing what I had to do that time to get deals. And literally within 5 years, I was inducted into the company's Hall of Fame.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
so, you know, I think the mind can achieve anything it believes. And if it
Mhm.
believes you can't, then you can't.
Mhm.
But if it believes you can, then you absolutely can.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you, I'll see if you have something on this, then that would be actionable items, anything that you might be able to share with someone who is right now feeling like they'd like to get into the business. They're caught up in a little bit in that fear
Mm-hmm.
mode, and that's holding them back. Anything, any exercise or any you know thought process or any special reading or I'm the analytical
Yeah,
mind, and
I
so I
know.
like to so I like to
That's why you and Peter get along so well.
right, right.
um, let's see. You know what, Tom? Everybody is a little bit different when it comes to what motivates them and gets them out of being stuck.
Hmm.
For me, it was reading books that helped me shift my mindset and
Hmm.
gain confidence, but it was also support of people who were actually there before I was, who have
Hmm.
done what I wanted to do, that I got to lean on and talk to. For
Hmm.
example, the meetup that you hold.
Hmm.
You know, there's so many investors there that people can talk to and network with and learn from. You
Yeah.
know, for me, it was networking. I just put myself into almost every meetup group that was available. Back then, they called them RIA meetings. Back
Hmm.
in the day,
Yeah.
and now they're called meetups,
Hmm.
because everything is so readily available on the internet. And I just latched onto people who had achieved success in the business and found out how they did it, and through the company was able to get mentors to really spend some time with
Hmm.
me as well. But I did every webinar
Hmm.
that was available. I signed up for everything, listened to all the podcasts that were out there, such as the ones that you are offering people as well.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a continual loop in my head, whether it was my lunch hour, when I was working, after, in the morning on my commute in, after work. I was just filling my head with information and ideas to get things done because I heard a quote this weekend when I was in Denver. If you believe, and I think it's a Robert Kiyosaki quote, I'm not sure, but if you believe you can, you can. And if you believe you can't, you're right as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, I always believed that I could, and I just was hungry for knowledge in any form that I could get it,
Mm.
whether it was to shift my mindset or to learn specific real estate techniques.
Yeah. Wow. Great.
Mhm.
I I'm thinking about you were talking about going to the meetup and getting out there and networking and doing whatever to get in front of people. And I think about the way that I was able to get over that because I when I came out to the Bay Area, I didn't know anybody. I knew my son Brandon, who was in Berkeley at the time, but that was
Mhm.
about it. And so I was able to. I had the opportunity to build a whole brand new network of people. And I remember feeling like, I don't know how to do this. And so what I would do is I would go to meetups or meetings or wherever I was and just start just a light casual conversation with whoever might be sitting beside me, even though I
Mhm.
wasn't comfortable with it. And it would be open-ended questions like, what is it that got you interested in real estate or whatever that meeting might be about? And it allowed that person to open up and share and talk. And it took me a little while, but as I kept on doing that, I'm now to the point where I feel fairly comfortable going up to most anybody and just talking to them about what it is. And so often I've found that if we talk about, if we ask about the other person and talk about them,
Mm-hmm.
even though it may not have anything to do with real estate or anything to do with what our end target is with, or our end goal is with a conversation, it still is part of building the rapport. And the rapport also is part of, I mean, it's the exercise of stretching ourselves to get out there and feel comfortable doing those things. So for anybody who feels like like they're not good at networking or they don't feel comfortable with networking, I would just suggest taking the idea of networking out of your mind, at least certainly for the time being, and just be present and just being interested in the other person. And that will eventually get to the point where it's going to become more comfortable having those conversations. And then at that point, that's when we start seeing how we can help each other out. So just.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. It's
Mhm.
making the connection,
Mhm.
and once you make a connection with people, you find out just your similarities,
Mhm.
common goals, what you have in common. I have even found, I still work as a dental hygienist now. I'm just one day a week. It's because of that connection. I found real estate deals out of state just by having a captive audience with
Mhm.
my hands in their mouth.
Yeah.
I found money
Mhm.
for deals.
Mhm.
I found attorneys for syndications. I don't know if you probably do know the attorney I'm talking about, but we can
Mhm.
talk offline about it. Happened to be working on his best friend. So there's so many ways that we are all connected. And if we just focus on making a connection with the person,
Yeah.
it leads to so much more richness and fullness in our life in general.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, this is great. Um, any parting thoughts? Anything you'd like to share?
Um, Basically, I just want to tell people that the change in their life happens with them. And if there's something that they've always wanted to do, I like to encourage people to do it. And, a lot of excuse that I hear being out on the road and meeting people contemplating starting in real estate, pardon me, is that they don't have time.
Hmm.
And one of my favorite quotes is, time comes to those who make it, not to those who try and find it. Because if
That's
you try
good.
and find time, you'll never find it, but you have to make the time to do what's important to you.
Yeah.
It really is about doing what you need to do for yourself to live a life that you want to live.
Hmm.
And for me specifically, it was real estate that got me to a place where I could have a lifestyle that I love. And one of our dreams, as you know, was to have a piece of property in Europe. And we got to realize that dream about 3 years ago now,
Nice.
to get that property. And, so you can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to. Just believe in
Great.
yourself. Yeah.
Great. And you mentioned that you had a blog. Are you open to sharing how people might either be able to find that blog, or if anyone has questions for you, if.
Oh, absolutely. It's the style mogul for success.com, and it's the number four, not FOR, but the number four. And I also have a Facebook page, the Style Mogul for Success.
Mhm.
And you can find me on Facebook, or that you can subscribe to the blog. Soon, my virtual assistant actually was in Miami, so she's recovering from the storm, but we're now offering a free gift to anyone who is subscribed, where you can get 7 daily tips. They're a video series of me of conquering your limiting beliefs. So,
Okay.
anybody who subscribes to that blog will be able to get those 7 tips as soon as she digs out of the hurricane and gets
Yeah.
them. But that should be going out to people shortly. So I would love to connect with anybody through the blog, and you can also email me through that as well.
And it's the style mogul number 4
.com. Yes.
success.com. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have that in the show notes. And so for anybody out there listening, if you have any comments, we'd love to hear your comments back. We'd like to really know what you'd like to hear, if we're covering topics that are beneficial to you, if you think of any other topics or would like us to go deeper on any particular topic, really it'd be super to hear from you. If there's anybody in particular that you'd like me to interview, I'd love to hear about that as well. So this podcast is about helping investors get to where they want to go, whether they're passive investors that are just looking to put money into deals with active investors who are willing to do the deals, or if it's active investors looking for the money from passive investors, and any service providers in between, and people, beginners and people who are veterans and doing it. It's for anybody that has a passion or is building a passion around real estate and real estate investing. So Eva, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you very much, and looking forward to many more. So thank you.